So I'm going to look at a back bend. The full posture is called the Cobra, or in Sanskrit that's Bhujangasana. There is an introductory phase to Cobra, we call the Sphinx, where you're resting on the elbows, and there's a whole range of options in between the two. So I'm going to go through this slowly. This gives us more time to explore this posture than we have in an actual class. Okay, so I hope that is the value in this piece of content, that you get a little longer to really have a look at that, and I'll show you how it works too, in a way that perhaps I couldn't as easily in a class. So first of all, we're going to line our front. We're going to prop ourselves up on the forearms, okay? On the forearms or the elbows. And that shape is referred to as the Sphinx. Notice in the Sphinx, at the moment at least, my elbow is right underneath my shoulder. So my upper arm is straight up and down. If that was a little bit too intense, you could take the elbow a little bit further forwards. And if you notice what's happening to my spine, the curve is lessening. So if there are any issues with the back, if it's too strong to be up on the elbows with the elbow right under the shoulders, you can always stay here with the elbows a little bit further out. If everything gets a little bit too much, you can always just lay on your front, rest your forehead on your hands, okay? So you already have a range of possibilities from this position with the upper arm vertical to having the elbows further forwards, a little further forwards still, all the way to just lying on your front. And lying on your front is, for most of us, actually a back bend as well. It's a very mild back bend. I wonder if you can see the curve of my spine. That is a curve. So even lying on your front is a mild back bend. Lying on our back tends to be more neutral, as in nothing's really actively going on. The spine is how it normally is. It's a neutral curve. And our spines are naturally curved. They're not straight up and down. If our spine was straight up and down, as in it didn't have a curve to it, then every step we took would be an enormous jolt to the spine. The curve is a good thing. It acts like a spring, like a shock absorber. When we're doing a back bend, we're accentuating that curve. So now with the elbows right under the shoulders, that's already quite a strong back bend. Don't underestimate this. Perhaps you don't go any further than this and just practice this. But to progress this, you could actually take the elbows off the floor in a moment. Let's not do it straight away. In order to take the elbows off the ground, I recommend going a little bit further out with the hands first and then trying it. My hands are quite far away, and in actual fact, with my hands that far away from me, it's no different in height or shape to that. I wonder if you can see that. With my hands there, the curve of my spine hasn't changed from where it was there with the elbow under the shoulders. So those two positions are actually equivalent. If your hands don't come any closer to you than that, where those two shapes are equivalent, there is not really much need to have the elbows off the floor. If that was the case, I think I would just stay here and just focus on that. It's easier to hold. Being easier has something to say for it. Okay, if, however, that feels easy and you can come further inwards, then we could try that. Bring the elbows down, shift the hands maybe slightly closer, and I will always do things gradually. That's now a little bit higher up than where I was on my elbows, okay? That position, that curve of the spine, is bigger than that curve. See how it came down a little bit when I brought my elbows down? Yeah? So that's a little bit higher. That's a little bit more of a curve to the spine. And by the way, it feels great. It feels nice. That's a really nice squeeze in my lower back. Maybe I could come even closer than that. Maybe I could come down, pull my hands a little bit further still, lift the body up. For me, that still feels nice. That feels nice in the lower back. It doesn't hurt. Notice my hips are still on the floor. This is not the same as upward facing dog, for those of you familiar with the posture. Yeah? It's not lifting the hips off the ground. It's staying with the lower half of the body on the floor. That's the difference between the Cobra, Bhujangasana, and upward facing dog, which you often do as part of a vinyasa sequence. Okay? That's not the same thing. Another difference for most of us is the hands are in front of the shoulders, not underneath the shoulders. And in fact, perhaps it's worth showing you that, the difference. So the posture I'm referring to there, the upward facing dog, is that. So I'm actually balanced on the tops of my toes and my hands, and that's it. It might not look like it, but my knees are off the ground. The only thing touching the floor are the hands and the tops of the feet. That's not what we're doing today. We're doing something different, okay? We're doing the Cobra, where you keep the hips on the floor and you lift the elbows, okay? So maybe that's where you stay. Maybe you just focus on that, okay? And see if you can hold it for a little while. And the progression in this posture, this task, if you like, today, is to practice this and see if you can hold it for a little longer each time. There are options too, and you can do these options. There are lots of options and different ways of doing it. Just bring the elbows back to the floor. Try bending the knees. See how that feels. Now, bring the feet together and just bend the knees. That adds more of a squeeze to the back. And maybe that's enough. Maybe you just stay in this, close the eyes. Maybe with the knees bent, you go back to experiment with lifting the elbows. Maybe you do both. Maybe you work the hands a little bit closer. Find a position that feels nice to hold. Sorry, I got a little screensaver that turned my screen off for a moment. Maybe you look upwards. Maybe you don't. Maybe you look forwards. Maybe you close your eyes. Maybe it feels a little bit strong with the legs up and you just focus on the upper half of the body. Maybe it all gets a little bit too strong. You go back to the elbows and stay in that initial posture. What I recommend, once you've held this for as long as you'd like to hold it, is first of all, you ease to lying flat on your front, rest your forehead on your hands. And then you have a couple of choices. You could roll onto your back and hug your knees into the body, or you could move into a child's pose or a variation of a child's pose. The reason is to stretch the spine slowly in the opposite direction. It's a counter posture. So I'm going to choose the child's pose. Like I say, you could also just lie on your back, hug your knees in. So slowly, all movements slowly. Ease back, sink back into the feet. Now, perhaps to start with, you might rest your head on your hands, okay? If you felt a little bit more flexible, you could bring the head to the floor. You could rest the hands down beside you, like so. I think another option is to take the knees nice and wide, stretch the arms forwards. Maybe the head touches the floor, maybe it doesn't. All of these options, you're just gently stretching the spine the other way, just for a few moments, okay? And there you have it. Really nice posture, really valuable for the spine. Enjoy, and I'll see you soon.